Today I'm speaking, have we ever been modern? Hold on, I've got something. Examining Lorraine Malach's ceramic wall mural Untitled, 1977 to 1979 in the Sturdy Stone Center of Saskatoon. For many years now, I have questioned my own relationship with modernity and the modern. Today, the structures that define and underlie modern are being teased apart, and Bruno Latour notably challenged us to question if we were ever modern. Latour's argument centered on the separation of nature and society, but by the 20th century, dualism in the modern agenda had already included art and science, science and religion, and art in religion. In his already 30-year-old intervention, or even call to action, Latour makes a case for a new engagement with the world, one that includes a parliament of things that recognizes an incongruous blend of hybrids and their crazy ability to reconstitute the social bond. In this paper, I argue that prairie artist Lorraine Malach, 1933 to 2003, inadvertently took on Latour's challenge some 20 years before he so clearly articulated his position. As a woman artist who embraced both science and spirituality, she doggedly drove to reconstitute the social bond through her ceramic murals that incorporated her scientific curiosity and spiritual awe. This paper proposes that Malach's murals challenge modernist dichotomies between science and religion, religion and art, and science and art. Malach's immediate ceramic environment in Regina during the 1960s was dominated by functional stoneware pottery in the Leach tradition, considered truly modern works of the time. Examples include the vessels of Jack Sears and David Ross and Fulmer Hansen of Hansen Ross Pottery, with whom she studied in the 1960s. Although she appreciated a well-designed functional teapot, Malach was not drawn to this approach, and likewise rejected Regina's version of the ironic California ceramic funk movement that followed in the 1970s. Proponents of this style included Regina feminists such as Beth Hone and Ann James, whose ceramics actively challenged patriarchal structures. At the Hone James studio in Regina, Malach undertook glaze instruction and fired her works until 1976. Instead, Malach rejected what she saw as feminist ghettoization and chose a sculptural tradition that reached back to the Della Robbia family of the Italian Renaissance. She increasingly explored decorative pattern, botanical representation, abstraction, and complex sculptural rhythms, which intertwined and progressively leapt further off her surfaces. Women ceramists were rare women ceramic muralists were then rare in North America. In 1965, Ruth Duckworth of the United States, known primarily for her minimalist vessels, undertook a commission without any mural or tile experience for the University of Chicago's Geophysical Department. Her monumental earth, water, sky ceramic tile environment, covering 4 walls and a ceiling, was installed in 1968. On a smaller scale, Greta Dales of Canada landed the commission for the Manitoba Centennial Concert Hall in Winnipeg, using brick clay to build 8 panels measuring 8 by 10 feet that depict various performing arts. Another public ceramic mural commission during this period was collaboratively completed by the 5 Potters of Ontario for the new Peel County Courthouse in Ontario. Although it was rare, women could and did embrace monumentality in the emerging field of ceramic murals. There are no particular identifiable feminist aesthetic vocabularies, not surprising as each of these women had their own influences and interests. Perhaps the most affinity is between Duckworth's and Malach's projects. Duckworth was fascinated by the natural world, geology, topography, and weather, along with space exploration, while Malach, a keen amateur of botany, geology, paleontology, astronomy, and astrophysics, devoured a variety of literature on these subjects. An avid gardener with her hands in the soil as well, she also spent nights peering through telescopes on the prairies. Her ceramic murals incorporated these passions. Botanical forms that first appeared in her 1964 niche sculptures for St. Michael's Retreat in Lumsden, Saskatchewan, was subsequently layered with representations of insects, fossils, and somewhat later astronomical references, and finally astrophysical ones. Malach was also an accomplished musician. Her visual language incorporated the shapes of musical instruments, even musical notations, along with her fossils and growing forms, all which metamorphosed one into another, building ceramic compositions that evoked the metaphorical music of the natural world that surrounded her. In Untitled 1977, commissioned by the provincial government through the Saskatchewan Arts Board for the lobby of Saskatoon's Sturdy Stone Centre, she hybridized the articulated forms of fossilized exoskeletons found in the Canadian West with the shapes of musical instruments and prairie flora. The imagery of Untitled argues for breaking down the barriers between scientific and artistic disciplines. Through its visual and material power, it also speaks to spirituality at a time when religion and contemporary art were considered incompatible. Malach was particularly inspired by the Franciscan ideology of a brother-sisterhood with all people and all creation, so eloquently expressed in St. Francis's 13th century Canticle of Brother Sun and Sister Moon. Her letters speak as equally about this conviction as her curiosity about the scientific origins of life and the workings of the universe. She adhered to science and its methods that revealed the complex layering of life forms on this planet, and to the religious mystique that celebrated the wonder and energy behind all life. Franciscan ideology embraced a hybrid approach that combined science and faith. A Franciscan historian has traced a lineage between St. Francis's 13th century philosophy that bound the physical order to the moral order through the English Franciscan 13th century establishment of the Convent of Oxford and the scientific scholarship of Roger Bacon to the proliferation of publications on all branches of the sciences in the 17th and 18th centuries. However, the writer argues that during the 19th century, the natural sciences were rigorously eliminated from the textbooks of philosophy, and it was only in the early 20th century that a movement arose to include at least the general principles of the natural sciences within the scope of philosophy. As religion and science became progressively fractured, so did religion and art. In his 2004 preface to The Strange Place of Religion in Contemporary Art, James Elkins points out several opinions articulated in the art world when contemporary is conjoined with religious. His points include the positions that all art is inescapably religious, the separation of art and religion is predicated on the rejections and separations of modernism, and the concerns of 20th century art cannot be those of religion. And while art might be seen to be religious or spiritual, talk about them together is misguided. He concludes that modern spirituality and art are rum companions. Either the art is loose and unambitious, or the religion is one-dimensional and unpersuasive. This fraught relationship between art and spirituality was one of the challenges Malach faced when creating her murals. In a similar way, modernism separated the art and science that Malach strove to mutually celebrate. Writer and physicist C.P. Snow argued in his influential mid-century, The Two Cultures and the Scientific Revolution, that science and the arts had ceased to speak the same language. Science is about truth, is rational, detached, and objective, while art is about appearances, is irrational or non-rational, and subjectively intuitive. Snow observed that it is bizarre how very little of 20th century science has been assimilated into 20th century art. 50 years later, Latour also tackled the artistic image in science, suggesting that scientific images purport to represent the definable facts of the world, in contrast to religious images that speak to ineffable truths. He argues that nothing is more absurd than the opposition between the visible world of science and the invisible world of religion. Furthermore, he asks how Western arts can emerge from the shadow cast by scientific and religious pictures that either involve the tyranny of simply objective, purely representative, quasi-scientific illustrations, or the obligation of once again presenting the credos of the faithful. Malach's Untitled tackles these problems. The mural presents us with scientific discoveries in the natural world. It suggests intellectual curiosity, the ineffable entanglements of music and science, the origins of life, and the passion of living. Malach's Untitled 1977 fuses the sciences, the arts, and even spirituality or religion, challenging neat modernist categories. The point is, she challenges us to be more than modern. Thank you.